A very good morning. They always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself. Sakthi Institute of Information and Management Studies is welcoming you all to our 7-day international FDP on post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities, a global perspective. SIIMS is founded by Padma Bhushan Aruchilva Dr. N. Mahalingam and is ably guided by Dr. B.K. Krishnaraj Manavaraya, President, and Shri M. Balasubramaniam, Secretary. Sakthi Institute is a constituent of Sakthi Group of Educational Institutions, Pollachi. It is a standalone business school established in 2010, have attained bigger heights in all possible aspects. Based at Pollachi, it achieves in bridging the rural and urban divide through education with a vision of unearthing leadership for emerging India. Today is the day 7 of our international FDP on challenges in manufacturing, redefining HR's role. The outbreak of COVID-19 has forced organizations into perhaps the most significant social experiment of the future of work in action, with work from home and social distancing policies radically changing the way we work and interact. But the impact on work is far more profound than just changing where people work. It is also fundamentally altering what work is performed and how we perform it. Many workers are doing tasks they have never could have imagined a few weeks ago, sometimes in ways they wouldn't have thought of. With jobs at the heart of how work gets done, leaders have unprecedented opportunity to reimagine them by rearranging work and having employees take on different responsibilities to better respond to the evolving needs of their organizations, customers, and employees. It can be made possible in 3 ways: to shift work, talent, and skills to where and when they are needed most, thereby building the organizational resilience and agility necessary to navigate uncertain times and rebound with strength when the economy recovers. Although the COVID-19 pandemic is a difficult time, it can also be the time of unprecedented creativity. Reimagining jobs around the constraints of today's challenging business environment may accelerate the future of work and open up new and innovative ways in how, where, and by whom work gets done. Ultimately, this can help us build greater resilience and efficiency in our organizations and help people live healthier and more sustainable lives. To elaborate on this, we have Mr. Suresh Verghis, founder, Global Coach Resources, visiting faculty, Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai. Now, I request Mr. T. Shivanyanam Selvakumar, Assistant Professor SIIMS, to introduce the resource person of the day.
A very good morning to all. This is Shivanyanam Selvakumar, Assistant Professor, SIIMS, extending a warm welcome to all the participants for the final day of 7-day International FDP on post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities, a global perspective. Today, we have Mr. Suresh Verghis, who is a leadership coach and facilitator. I am delighted to introduce our guest to this forum. Mr. Suresh is the founder of Global Coach Resources LLP and visiting faculty at the Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai. Born in Chicago, USA, raised in India, and educated globally, Suresh has over 27 years of broad-based experience, leading human resources as HR director in Heidelberger Druckmaschinen AG India and AB Mauri ABF PLC for India and Asia. He has worked across manufacturing, automotive, capital equipment, food ingredients, retail, agricultural, specialty chemicals, precision tooling, feed manufacturing, technology, and IT product companies in human resources and consulting. Mr. Suresh has conducted numerous training programs on leadership, emotional intelligence, teamwork, interpersonal skills, coaching skills, and personal effectiveness across various countries in the world. He has over 5,000 hours of one-on-one coaching experience. Mr. Suresh is an alumnus of Melbourne Business School, Singapore Institute of Management, and European School of Management and Technology, Cologne, where he underwent on-site management programs. He secured post-graduation degrees in personnel management and industrial relations and in English literature. Mr. Suresh is a professional certified coach certified by the International Coach Federation a certified conversational intelligence coach, and a member of their respective associations. He is a professional cyclist and travels extensively. On behalf of SIIMS, I extend a hearty welcome to the resource person, Mr. Suresh Verghis, and he is going to share his knowledge on this topic, challenges in manufacturing, redefining HR's role. I also welcome all the principals, deans, directors, faculty members of various colleges, professionals, and industry people who are attending this FDP. Thank you. Now, I request our guest, Mr. Suresh Verghis, to take over the session.
Thank you very much, Professor Sullivan. Just give me a second while I try and get myself and my slides on the screen. Okay, so I hope all of you can hear me and see me clearly. My sincere thanks to Dr. B.K. Krishna Jwanarayar, President, Sri M. Balasubramanian, Secretary, Dr. P. Subramanian, Director, and Dr. Thiagu, Program Coordinator, as well as Professor Selvan and Kuntavi for the fantastic introduction that they have given. My greetings to all the faculty who are listening in universities in India and abroad, and also all the students of management studies. Hoping that you can clearly see and hear, I'm moving on with the topic for the day. We have about the next probably 50 minutes to be able to work through this. There is a lot that I would like to tell you about my impressions about the human resource situation and role during the pandemic and post-pandemic. And as Kuntavi has very accurately also described the current situation being that HR has a very, very enhanced role to play in the new world and in the new world order. So I would like to start with an activity just as I would do in any training program, in any classroom session, or in any coaching session. And if you can, I would like you to try and write down a sentence starting with the words, "Never have I ever." And as you can see on the screen, try and keep it realistic and exclusive. Realistic as in it has to be something that is humanly possible, of course. And exclusive as in try and think of something that nobody else has never ever done. This exercise for you would be very revealing, because the moment you try and think about it, you try and even think about it, it might be a little difficult to write down something that you have never done that others have also never done. An example that comes to my mind is during the lockdown situation, 2 months into it, everybody was beginning to wonder, when will I ever get to meet a hairdresser or go to a salon? And several people instantly became expert barbers and hairdressers for themselves. So therefore, the moment you think about never have I ever, this pandemic is trying to tell us exactly that. None of us have seen this ever happening in the last 100 years, because the last pandemic happened 100 years ago. And therefore, anything that anybody says in the world today is only a wait and see kind of a statement. Nobody can be certain for sure what everything will pan out to be in 2 months' time or even 3 months' time. So therefore, as early as that. Moving on, in 2019, this is the sort of map that we have of the world's manufacturing output. You can see appropriately represented there in those cogwheels, the 3 or 4 major countries that lead in manufacturing and all the others surrounding them. India also exists there. So therefore, it is up to us now to be able to try and reimagine the post-COVID-19 return. And when we say post-COVID-19, it may not be a world that is devoid of COVID. It would still be a world that is still grappling with COVID. So therefore, the toughest leadership test is how to bring a business back on track in a situation where a vaccine is yet to be found and the economy is struggling. We need to be able to reimagine in order to become strong again, in order to sustain how a business model should look like in order to return to normal operations. So therefore, there is an opportunity in every adversity. And history has taught us that. And there are people who have made it after numerous failures. Those who step up to their game will be prepared to face those challenges and grab opportunities of the new normal. It's extremely important to be able to hustle and look out for those new opportunities than those who do not and those who wait and watch. We always have to tell ourselves that this too shall pass. As I said earlier, history has taught us, and history continues to teach us, that the worst of times bring out the best in people. And that is what pushes us to do our best. Adversity is what pushes us to do our best. You know that much more than I do. So therefore, what is this new normal? Nobody can even define what the new normal will be like because we are not yet there. I'm talking to you from a lockdown Chennai when numbers are skyrocketing by the day. Definitely not a happy situation to be in. I was just talking to a couple of other professors and family members as to when I could travel again, because travel is extremely important. But there is absolutely no travel that can be planned in the foreseeable future, which I think is definitely in the next couple of months or at least 3 months from now. So, however, every cloud has a silver lining, and therefore I would like to give you some examples of some people who have actually taken this in their stride and been able to make the change that is needed in not months, in not weeks, in not days, but even in a matter of hours. So let's look at one of the examples. A fast food chain had to shut down its operations. They avoided layoffs by partnering with a health and wellness retailer, thus helping the retailer meet the spiking demand in a newly designated essential business. And now there are many more examples. This information is about a month old now. A large retailer was planning to launch a delivery business in the next 18 months. However, when lockdown hit, they went operational with this new delivery business in just 2 days. Financial services company, they transitioned more than 1,000 global operations staff to work from home arrangements, equipping them with new technology within 72 hours to ensure business continuity. And a retail conglomerate in the Middle East retrained 1,000 people in 2 days, redeploying them from a suddenly stagnant business like movie theaters to a booming critical one like grocery retailing. So you can see several examples, both abroad as well as around us locally, that have actually transformed, metamorphosized into new businesses that address the need of the hour. There is a bit of scrambling, of course, but there will also be a bit of settling down that is happening. That is, my friends, a new world order just waiting to happen or beginning to happen. There is an organizational adrenaline which stems out of the fear and uncertainty, because it is the injection of the release of cortisol that makes us flee. It is the release of cortisol that makes us run for our lives to save ourselves. And that's exactly what is happening right now. That fear and uncertainty is giving way to creativity and innovation. But people are energized and they eliminate bureaucracy. This is not the time for bureaucracy and all those roadblocks that make any progress slow. They empower previously untested leaders with big responsibilities. It's like asking someone, can you do this job? Yes. Have you done this job before? No, but try anyway. You win some, you lose some, but at least you learn from it. And the learning has to be quick. turbocharged decision making, absolutely skyrocketing with all the decisions that you can take. And most often, when you take a decision and move forward, you are right 80% of the time or 90% of the time, but take the decision anyway. This is no time for procrastination. Somebody said in one of the organizations that was moving forward in this manner that our senior team meets every morning for 30 minutes. We make decisions and go. We don't have full information, but that's okay. We cannot afford not to move. So therefore, friends, it is time to move. According to McKinsey and Company, from the research that I did in preparation for this talk, there are 4 strategic areas to focus on from an overall business perspective. Number 1, recovering revenue. 2, rebuilding operations. 3, rethinking the organization. And 4, accelerating the adoption of digital solutions. There is a sudden move from physical contact to digital and online. And that's exactly what we're talking about right now. There are so many such sessions that are happening every day for a lot of people who have previously not even known the provision of such arrangements. In terms of business during the upturn days, during the good old days, I would say, companies used to build costs and add non-value adding processes. They used to hire employees more than was needed because the times were good, offering higher salaries, building up costs that have recurring expenses. And the involvement of HR used to tend to be quite less in many cases. The third downturn is what we are experiencing over the last 30 years. There were downturns in 1991, 92, in 1997, 98, and now we are having a downturn in 2020, 21, and probably even beyond that. And that is the reason why HR is now in demand. However, one of the things that we might have to let go of is a complete departure from hierarchy. And what I mean a complete departure is not to dismantle the entire structure, but to ensure that hierarchy and bureaucracy do not slow the process of decision-making and movement. So companies that are traditionally used to operating only through an hierarchy can find the current environment paralyzing. And therefore, they need to make it more flexible and seamless. Hierarchical companies can still be slow to react. And therefore, my introduction earlier about the need to hustle. So therefore, what are those HR imperatives that we are talking about? Building on the HR business case, one of the quotes that I came across as I was thinking about this particular topic is from the book on conversational intelligence. I happen to be a certified conversational intelligence coach. And the author of this book, a neuroscientist by name Dr. Judith Glaser, says, in order to get to the next level of greatness, depends on the quality of culture. And the quality of culture encompasses a lot of things that I just told you about. If it's an hierarchical culture, there might be a breakdown that is needed, a more flat structure, a structure nevertheless. If there has been clunky processes, they need to be made more simple. If there have been 14 levels of approval required in order to buy an air conditioner, that might have to be made as into 2 levels or at the most 3 levels. That is what I'm talking about. So this quality of culture again depends on the quality of relationships. How far have relationships been nurtured over a period of time between internal stakeholders and external stakeholders? Which again depends on the quality of conversations. To what extent have conversations happened in a free and fair manner across different levels, both vertically and horizontally? And therefore, everything ultimately depends on conversations, because everything happens through conversations. So this is what is embodied in the book written by Dr. Judith Glaser, Conversational Intelligence: How Great Leaders Build Trust and Get Extraordinary Results. The reason why I'm talking about this right now is simply because there is a huge dependency, not just on technology, but on the human factor. And that is exactly what human resource professionals need to understand at this point of time. So HR should be a partner in business growth and strategy. They should plan and recommend a future playing field, ensure people productivity, ensure that costs are kept minimal, ensure that they are business managers and strategic thinkers, and allowed to challenge growth projections, just as the finance function would be allowed to challenge numbers, for example. So therefore, the conclusion is that this is not just up to HR professionals. It is up to each one of us working in an organization, or each one of us in any sphere of business or in any sphere of the world of work, to be our own HR manager. It's up to each one of us to think as a people manager or as a people person. So therefore, everyone should hustle, and there is no room for complacency. I have actually put together 10 things that HR professionals and anyone who feels that they have a responsibility for human resources to be able to come up with during the pandemic situation and the post-pandemic situation. And these are those 10 things. Number one, recognize. I will go into a little bit of detail after I show you all the 10 steps. Recognizing is about acknowledging potential, acknowledging contribution of people. 2, upskilling. Now is the time to upskill. And you can see a lot of Zoom-based and live YouTube-based programs running, live Instagram, live Twitter, live LinkedIn. There are a lot of such talks happening by experts around the world. And there are a lot of people who have never been on such platforms who are now forced to be on such platforms. Some willingly, some unwillingly, but most of them getting into it with the enthusiasm that it requires, because there is a market out there for it. Morale, absolutely important in this kind of a situation where you see a lot of not so good news on your TV screens, in the newspapers, and on online news. An outlet, a vent to make sure that people are heard. Career, an absolutely important perspective to be able to help people remap their career paths. Clarity in terms of communication. Reconstructing in terms of the work aspect, and looking at, should we have a people to work approach or a work to people approach? If it was a work to people approach, then should we now look at a possible people to work approach? Redesigning the workspace and resizing the organization. So a little bit of detail into each of these 10 steps, after which I will be concluding and leaving the floor open for any questions. Number one, recognize. What do we mean by that? Making recognition a priority is extremely important. In many of my personal effectiveness programs or high performance team building programs, I used to always keep saying that recognition is one of the 9 or 7 interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills include listening and questioning, building on ideas of others, constructive argument, involving, summarizing, and so on. One important interpersonal skill that any professional has to practice is recognition. And there is a scientific reason for that. It is no longer a nice to have. It is a must have. So therefore, making recognition a priority is important. And the answer to that lies in neuroscience. It is simply the release of oxytocin in the brain that creates a mind towards repeating a performance or an achievement which was recognized. And that is exactly what we need human beings to do today, people to do today, to be able to repeat the same excellent performance or achievements that they've had, or even overachieve them and surpass them. And that is why recognition comes as number one at this point of time. Recognizing hard work, appreciating in public, performance appraisals with happy endings, ensuring flexible shift timings, extra vacation days to boost people, are all the different kinds of recognition possibilities that are there. Now is the time to be able to give them all a boost. Upskilling, an excellent time to do upskilling when people relatively have time on their hands. A lot of people in these lockdown days are taking to online courses, which is a very great thing to do. Udemy, Coursera, there are multiple options available, both paid and unpaid. And therefore, not just management students, but also professionals like us, faculty members, also need to be able to constantly keep upgrading our knowledge. And we have to take this time to be able to do that, because there is a new world order that is coming up. We are not entirely there yet. And therefore, in order to be prepared for that new world order, it's important to be able to upskill. So organizing skill training programs, employees can get stuck due to their inability possibly. It affects confidence and performance. So providing that necessary training and enabling individual growth leads to also company growth. We are talking of morale. Morale or motivation is important to sustain. Being mindful about the possible demoralization of staff and of the workforce is extremely important for HR professionals. Keeping their spirits up. When they are happy, obviously they do their best, because when they are happy, they have the release of oxytocin in their brains. Organizing motivational talks, activities to lower stress, improving productivity, and maintaining happy and positive work culture within the organization. At this point of time, I would like to say that it is extremely heartening to note that many consultants and many teachers, many trainers and online service providers, have also come along to be able to provide their services either free of charge or at very, very discounted prices. So everybody is stuck by the pandemic, and therefore we are all in the situation where we need to make sure that we are there to help one another. This is not the time to compete for space, but more to be able to grow together so that we tide over this situation together. And that approach and mindset is absolutely important to have. We need to be an outlet for people to be able to vent out their frustrations. It is quite possible when somebody is locked down in his or her house or confined spaces for months together, 3 months right now, and the fourth counting possibly. It is quite possible that people are affected quite psychologically as well. So therefore, it's important to be able to help them with time and space to be able to vent out, to be able to talk. They need someone to talk to, or even provide them some professional help, like counseling or therapy, for example. It helps us to find solutions to problems. And employer-friendly policies are definitely going to go a very long way in enabling people to have that outlet that they so require. In terms of career, HR professionals can do very well to be able to mindfully focus on individuals who have concerns about what is going to happen. And that is definitely a question on everybody's minds. We always used to have certain good times that we were used to over a period of time. The whole world settled into a way of working. Individuals settled into their ways of working over a long period of time. But the pandemic threw everything out of gear. And it took us completely unawares. We just had days to be able to prepare for a lockdown and hours to be able to prepare for making sure that our essentials are all stocked up. Never seen this situation before. So therefore, even for career professionals, there are lots of question marks. And I would say this is the time to be able to be that listening ear that they need. Helping them in their career advancement, being able to provide them perspectives about what could be the future, based on the signals that we are currently receiving. And what all can people do? I found myself talking to a few students over the last few days when they had these questions about, when I finish my course, what is the world that I'm going to see? It took my memory back to many thousands of people who had set out on vacation cruises across the world back in October, November, or December. And when they came back from sea, they found the world locked down. 3 months out at sea, and the world had completely changed. Many of them were not able to dock until much later. And there were people even on board who had died because of the pandemic or other issues, because of which they could not get help in time, and so on. So therefore, even these students are trying to look at, what will the world look like at the end of my course, say after 1 year or after 2 years? What's going to happen? And therefore, what I find myself also telling them is, keep an open mind. The world is at your feet. You might be qualified in something. You might end up doing something completely different. However, never lose sight of your passion and never lose sight of your vision. It's extremely important to be able to have that passion and vision somewhere in view. And you never know what you will end up doing after your course. So therefore, soak and sink and immerse into the learning spectrum, into the learning world. And for all of us, not just students, but for all of us, even career professionals, it's extremely important to be able to observe about what is happening and to look out for opportunities that could come our way. Dissatisfied employees could be the most talented ones. So it's important for us to be able to make sure that their morale is lifted up by helping them with career advancement. Assigning challenging tasks. Everybody has a need to work. Everybody has a need to feel that they are productive and useful, and they are contributing something. It also contributes to self-esteem and a feeling of self-worth. Ensuring cross-team collaboration is extremely important within the organization. And if they find their work intellectually stimulating, there will be no room for disgruntlement. And therefore, you can see that all the points that I have before this also lend their connections to this point number 5 that I have in terms of career advancement. It boosts morale. It gives you an outlet. It is related a lot to upskilling and recognition of people's capability. At number 6, I have something that is extremely important, again, not just for HR professionals, but for anybody who is a leader. Communication in terms of being clear, concise, and complete. My 3 C's for clarity in communication: clear, concise, and complete. Communication at this point of time is extremely important. And I would say transparency in communication is equally important. It is due to the lack of transparency that we have had a lot of issues surrounding this pandemic all over the world. The lack of transparency created an unprepared world. And the lack of transparency still continues to dog the citizens of countries. There are governments, there are people in power who have information that they may or may not want to release. And that is extremely important for us to be able to ascertain for ourselves what the situation is like, so that we are able to move forward on our individual agendas with clarity. So as organizations, as professionals, as HR professionals, and as business leaders, or as function leaders, we need to be able to make sure that the team that we are responsible for is communicated to with clear, concise, and complete terms. Clarity in communication is extremely important. Dr. Judith Glaser, to quote her, says, 9 out of 10 conversations fail to make the mark. And this is on the basis of research that has happened in over 500 organizations worldwide, and therefore across 1,000 or thousands of professionals. 9 out of 10 conversations failed to miss the mark means that for every 10 conversations, 9 of them were received with ambiguity. And when I say failed to miss the mark, what it means is that people walked away from such conversations with a completely different sense of the reality, or they did not have the complete clarity of what was being communicated to them. This is extremely important for us to keep in mind, that 9 out of 10 conversations fail to miss the mark, and therefore all the more importance for the speaker or for the communicator to be able to make sure that his or her communication is clear, concise, and complete. To reconstruct how work is done is something that all professionals are looking at this point of time. Everybody is looking at, how do I reconstruct how work is done? Re-envisioning processes completely. All those chunky and clunky processes may have to give way to much more simpler processes. And therefore, a lot of creativity and innovation is called for at this point of time. Employees need to be involved. It's not just the people in positions of authority who need to take those decisions, but it is very important to be able to involve people on the front line who have all the knowledge about how things are done. Customer-facing people, all those who are in the front lines and on the ground, in the field, are the ones who need to be involved in order to ensure that processes are more simplified, and the re-envisioning has to happen with their involvement. It is important to examine their professional development. For example, being physically present at the office at start, but later on giving them the opportunity to work remotely as well. So there is, as you can see, elements of trust and reliability being built up through all of this. Trust is something that probably we did not give much attention to earlier. But the organizations that have focused on empowerment, on flatter structures, on seamless communication, and on empowering the front line, most importantly, are today organizations that have already been, to a large extent, prepared for a pandemic kind of a situation. But organizations where decisions have been centered at the top most of the time are the organizations that are less prepared to handle a pandemic kind of a situation. Our foot soldiers on the ground or in the field are today the ones who might have to take decisions. It may not always be easy to be able to refer back to headquarters to be able to take those decisions. People need solutions on the ground and right now. People to work or work to people. This is something to be decided. We were earlier in an upturn situation over the last many years where it was mostly work to people. Today, and at this point of time, we are looking at a situation where who is available and what skills are available, and therefore identifying people to work rather than work to people. It is a fine balance between being able to run an organization as much as we want to, as it has been done before. But you will also notice that the old world order is no longer relevant. A lot of it has become redundant already. And therefore, looking at what skills are available, what capabilities are available, and therefore what parts of the business can actually be manned and made operational, and what else can be done in terms of creating new business lines or in terms of creating new business structures or new businesses altogether. So when we say people to work, what we mean is there has been a competition for talent, and it has been fiercer than ever before. People could be less willing to relocate, and that is something we'll have to live with, because we are no longer in that position where we can command the ability to get those skills when we need them on demand. Organizations are reconstructing how they can work remotely. There are organizations that are now looking at satellite structures, people working from home, like all of us. I'm right now sitting in my office at home, my home office. And I'm conducting classes right from here. So therefore, if that was already being done to some extent by some people, then adapting those procedures or adapting those new ways of working might be a little easier. Which roles must be carried out in person and to what degree? So therefore, it's important now to zoom in and look at all of these with a bit of a microscope and try and identify what can be done remotely and what needs to be done in person, and how much of it can be minimized to the extent that it can possibly even become completely extinct. There are lots of businesses that I told you earlier about, the examples that I gave you about, that have completely converted to online and less or no contact. But there were many businesses that are still struggling to look at, from 100% contact kind of a situation, how can we bring about a contactless, more secure sort of an environment within the business sphere. So there are several think tanks that have been organized, that have been created in order to simply bring about the new thinking about how can we continue to either do those businesses or look at alternative ways of doing those same businesses. And that leads our discussion to redesign, creating workspaces specifically designed to support interactions that cannot happen remotely. If you still need to have such workspaces, then how is that possible? In a place where we could earlier fit in 100 people, today might just fit in 25, because you need to create those distances between individuals, at least for a time until when there is a vaccine and you can completely say that this pandemic has been eradicated from the world, just like smallpox was eradicated back then. Working in cubicles or working from homes, a question to ask for several businesses. And if office space is indeed needed, then how close are they to employees' residences? These are all the questions that are on the minds of HR professionals at the moment. And then coming to the question of resizing the footprint creatively. We had a footprint earlier, and that footprint consisted of several businesses and several parts or segments of businesses. What is that footprint going to look like now and in the future? Today, we might have a semblance of the footprint that we had earlier. Some parts of it still alive, some parts of it almost defunct. And in the new world order, probably 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line, we might have a completely new footprint. We probably can't envision that footprint right now. But this calls for a lot of mindful reflection on how that footprint will look like. Therefore, coming transformation will use a portfolio of space solutions: owned space, standard leases, flexible space, co-working space, and remote work. To a large extent, co-working spaces has also come about in the recent past. However, they were also under a lot of stress. They also had to lay off a lot of employees in the last 2 or 3 months. And then rework and look at how can we still provide those spaces, because we need those spaces for essential services that need to work physically on site. And therefore, how do we do that? The percentage of time worked in main offices could decline, and flexible office space will increase by about 27% of work time, which is like an estimation at the moment. It could change. So to summarize, or to take the next few minutes into a kind of a summary, there is a message to my fellow CHROs. I was also not so long back in that position where I had to think through this for the organization where I headed the human resources function. Across 9 factories and 3,000 people, there were at several points of time different kinds of emergency situations that had to be dealt with. But I am 100% certain that this situation is nothing like any of that. So my message to CHROs who are on this call or who might be seeing this particular session later on is resolve, resilience, and return. Resolve in terms of being able to take action and move forward. As I said earlier, decision making and ensuring that decisions are acted upon instantly and without delay is the need of the hour. Taking action and hustling is extremely important at this point of time. It also calls upon a lot of resilience. We are losing people as well, not just from jobs, but from this world as well. So therefore, we are not in a comfortable situation to be able to move forward and say that this is how it's going to look like even next month. So resilience is extremely important to be able to take things in our stride and move forward in the best interests of the business and of the organization, of the society, the community, and so on. And of course, a return. We are all wanting a return back to normalcy. But that return back to normalcy is not going to happen very soon. And that is all that we can say at this point of time. But how easy can we make that return? And therefore, it's important as professionals to be able to make sure that literally on a day-to-day basis or even on an hour-to-hour basis, we need to look out for those signs that will give us ideas to be able to know how can we return back to a world of work, either similar to what it was before, or more often than not, a completely different world of work altogether. However, a world of work nevertheless. If we keep playing by the old rules, we will never change the game. Therefore, welcome to the new rules and welcome to hustle. The few things that I would like to leave you with are, we need to be grateful and ambitious. We are here today talking to each other, discussing, reflecting, and supporting each other. We need to be grateful for what we have, and yet we need to be ambitious. We need to lead from wherever we are. Leadership can start exactly where you are standing or sitting right now. We need to champion each other, not just ourselves. We need to make failure our fuel and believe in ourselves and demand the ball. That is what the New World Order requires of us as of now. And that would be my message to all fellow HR professionals who are listening on this call. I'm at the end of my talk, and the floor is open for any questions that anybody has at this point of time.
Thank you very much, sir. It was the talk about the resilience that you have put forth between the challenges and opportunities is wonderful. Thank you for that. We will go for the questions now, sir. The first question is from Joy Singh. Is it the right time for the collaboration of humans and technology? In that case, can organizations afford for the investment?
Well, the answer is a bit of yes and no. What is the right time for what is something that people are still learning to discover. So the short answer to that would be, we need to proceed cautiously but with confidence, and we need to look at what will work for us. It is definitely the right time to leverage on the people aspect of things, on the people power, creativity, innovation, and so on, and also look at what technology will work for us at this point of time. Not all technology will work for us right now, because we are not in the earlier situation where things were when things were normal and what we were used to. So my short answer to that would be, proceed with caution, however, keeping people in front and ensuring that the technology fits what we need for the foreseeable future.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for that. The next question is from Mr. Shivakumar. Employee engagement is one of the prime role of human resource. How can this be executed in the pandemic times like this?
Well, employee engagement, you're absolutely right, is topmost on the agenda. And if you remember the 10 points that I put forward, recognition was the first and foremost among them. And it is not by accident that recognition found the first place among all those points. It is very important for us to be able to look at the contributions of people over the years, what potential they have, and what they can provide and contribute in the immediate future, especially in the situation. And that cannot happen without engagement. So employee engagement has always been a priority, no doubt about that, but it has assumed a very high level of importance at this point of time, because it is only people that we have. Organizations used to say, and leaders used to always say, that people are our greatest asset. But many times I have always wondered whether it was really an authentic statement. Now, there is no choice but to ensure that people feel engaged, they feel wanted, they feel that sense of belonging. It is just yesterday that I was taking a class for a group of executive MBA students on diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And therefore, and with things that are happening besides the pandemic all over the world, and you know what I mean, diversity and inclusion is absolutely important at this point of time. And not just diversity and inclusion, but it is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So therefore, the sense of belonging is extremely important. And how would the sense of belonging come? It is only with engaging with people and employee engagement.
Very well explained, sir. I got two questions that are interrelated. The question one is, presently, the companies are laying off workers. What would be the career opportunities for graduates or postgraduates who are stepping into the industry? It is the number one question. The next one is, there is a significant skill gap that's been forced by a COVID-19 pandemic. What is the role of industries and academic institutions in upskilling the graduates?
Yeah, so I will take both these questions one by one. For the first question, in terms of opportunities for graduates and postgraduates, their thought is not unfounded. And this is exactly the question that several students have also asked me. And as I said earlier in my talk about where do we go from here? What is going to be the situation after a month, after a year, and so on, after we finish our course, and so on. And just last evening, I was answering a call from an executive MBA student who called me from Mumbai. And he was asking me exactly the same question. There is a lot of uncertainty, and because of which there is a lot of stress as well. And I will tell you what I told that particular executive MBA student. What I told him, and he's 26 years old, what I told him is, be prepared to be able to find opportunities at the end of your course that were non-existent before. Be prepared and open in your mind to look at opportunities that you never thought you would look at. Be prepared to undertake opportunities that you were never qualified for from an academic standpoint, but you can qualify yourself for if you take a short-term course or if you just undergo a short-term training. But be prepared and flexible to lead yourself into jobs, roles, vocations, and professions that you are unprepared for, but you would still love doing. That is all I can say at this point of time. But if there are specific questions later on, I'm open to take them one-to-one with people who have any specific questions about this. For the second question, the skill gap that you are talking about, institutions such as ours have an extreme need to literally open up a cell right now, an entire department right now. It need not be manned by an army of people, but one or two professionals who are getting information from around the world, from the internet world and so on, to be able to provide guidance to students on what can be done or what courses they can undertake. So institutions need to be guided by the cell that is open and getting information and willing to change literally curriculum, syllabus, to change the traditional lectures in the classroom into something that is more relevant for the day. One of the issues that we've always had in the past with academic curricula is that a lot of them tended to be outdated. And I'm talking from the experience of having been in human resources, having been a director of human resources in the not so distant past, and seeing graduates coming up who are literally unprepared for the corporate world or the professional world. So what they learned academically does give them a solid foundation, no doubt, but it seldom prepares them for a corporate world or a professional world. So what institutions, in my opinion, can do today is to be in touch with the reality and ensure that a lot of instruction is provided on the basis of what is today's reality and relevance for the curriculum, for the syllabus, for the academic instruction. So institutions need to kind of revamp their level of instruction or the content within, of course, the norms. I know there are norms that are there, but within those norms to be able to make them extremely more relevant. And today that need is nothing like it has been before. We need to be able to look into the future as much as we can and try and visualize the future. And therefore, faculty have to up their game to a large extent. And I cannot understate the importance of that any more than this.
So I suppose that very well explains the answer, and there is a huge responsibility that is being put upon the academic institution, especially the universities that are framing the rules and regulations and the syllabus of syllabus for the students and I mean the graduates.
Absolutely.
So we'll go with the one last question, and sure. This is from Rashid Khan. The businesses have started to operate to some extent after the lockdown, but getting the workforce seems to be a huge challenge, as most of the businesses across the states are dependent on migrant laborers. So how are we going to overcome this challenge?
Self-sufficiency was always important. Dependency on a particular workforce from a particular region or dependency on specific people at some point of time is going to hit us in the face. So building self-sufficiency was always important. And as I said earlier in my talk, organizations that were more tuned towards building that self-sufficiency, they called them BCPs, business continuity plans. The organizations that were very high on business continuity plans, to be able to have their plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and plan E in place are the organizations today that are very, very less affected. And I personally know some organizations like that, which are worldwide organizations, because they had their business continuity plan in place. They never expected this pandemic. But even during the pandemic, their business continuity plan was put to the test. And it more or less supported the plans that they had. Now, to answer the question very specifically, I would say that organizations now need to look at, or at least in an interim period, need to look at the work to people aspect rather than the people to work aspect. So who's available to do what? Who can do what? And who is willing to do what? So it's not just about the skills and the knowledge, but also about the attitude. There are people who are only willing to go to a nearby location for work because they are scared that they will be affected by the virus. They do not want to travel to a place which is congested, for example. So it completely depends on who can we get and what can they do. So it is an interim phase where some businesses and some parts of the business can be operational depending on who's available. And we have a lot of examples around us for that locally as well. And then there would be a phase where I know the numbers are increasing, especially in India and around us, but there will be a phase where there will be a settling down happening, but definitely not with the situation that we had before. Migrant labor in their large numbers have gone back to their villages. And you know that there are very sordid stories about them. But we may not have all that labor back. And that is why it is important to build self-sufficiency. Or we need to look at how those jobs can be done differently. So now is the time to be able to bring in new thinking and new possibilities.
Thank you very much, sir. It is indeed a very informative speech covering the overall state of the challenges and the opportunities lying ahead, and your insistence on the resilience. Thank you for that. SIIMS has been privileged for having you as a resource person for the part of our international FDP session. Thank you very much, sir. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The pleasure was mine too. Thank you.
Now, I request Dr. Art Yahu, academic head, to propose the report on our international FDP that's been happening for a week.
Sakthi Institute of Information and Management Studies renders the best learning experience in the online world, even during the tough pandemic times. SIIMS amplify the opportunities through digital self-learning to enrich knowledge and the community. In line with this, it has organized an 7-day international faculty development program on post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities, a global perspective. It gives me an immense pleasure in proposing the report on our 7-day international faculty development program. The FDP was started on June 6, 2020, with the eminent speakers from various sectors. But the resource person for the FDP, and there was an overwhelming response from the participants from academia and industry across the country. On the first day, Mr. Pradeep, National Credit Manager, Axis Finance Limited, Mumbai, spoke on the topic unprecedented slowdown in banking sector. He elaborately discussed the genesis of the financial sector, steps that has led to a slowdown in the economy, and the immediate measures that must be taken to protect the banking system across the globe. The second day session was chaired by Mr. Ramji Raghavan, management consultant and moderator, Coimbatore. He highlighted crucial areas that the pandemic has created a paradigm shift and emphasized the significance of adjusting to the new normal scenario by Indian businesses in the post-lockdown. Mr. Bhaskar, Vice President Citigroup USA, was the resource person for the third day session. He spoke on the topic reprioritizing technology and cyber security and discussed how COVID-19 disruption has posed cyber threats and data privacy challenges in the IT sector and the precautionary measures to be taken to mitigate this cyber risk. On the fourth day, Professor Dr. Ashok Tyagarajan, CEO, Westminster Healthcare, Chennai, addressed the participants in the title, Challenges and Opportunities in Healthcare. In the speech, he discussed in detail about the challenges and opportunities in our healthcare system and emphasized the need for structurally competent healthcare system in India. The fifth day session, Classes in Cloud, New Normal Scenario in Education, was chaired by Dr. Chandrasekhar Menon, Dean, CMAT. His speech focused on the effective usage of digital learning platforms and emphasized for the importance of pivotal role played by faculty members in shaping the students' community. Mr. Srinivasan Ramachandran, corporate trainer and business consultant, Coimbatore, was the resource person for the 6-day session on rebooting Indian economy. He highlighted the impact that the pandemic has created in different segments such as consumption, manufacturing, technology, and sales, etc. He also focused on the opportunities available for the common man and businesses that will result in rebooting the Indian economy. The last session was by Mr. Suresh Verghis, founder, Global Coach Resources, visiting faculty, Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai. He elaborately discussed the HR imperatives required for the industry. He also emphasized the importance of redefining the role of HR managers in addressing the challenges in manufacturing. SIIMS is excited to share that our FDP on YouTube live sharing has been reached more than 20,000 participants, 2,700 watch hours of time, and 6,200 unique viewers so far. At this juncture, I would like to thank Dr. B.K. Krishnaraj Vanavaraya, President, who inspired us in formulating this FDP with assorted topics on this uncertainty, and Sri M. Balasubramaniam, Secretary, for his constant support in making this FDP a reality. I also thank our Director, Dr. P. Subramanian, for his guidance in successfully carrying out this international FDP. I also thank the faculty teams of SIIMS for making their continuous assistance in running this FDP. I appreciate all the participants for being part of this FDP. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. Take up the feedback that has been posted on the chat box, comment box, and the description of the video given below. I request all the participants to give us a week's time in getting your participation certificates to be sent to your email. Please give us a week's time so that we can send your participation certificates. Thank you all. It was a pleasure in running the 7-day international FDP. SIIMS is excited. We'll meet you in another exciting event like this one. Thank you so much for all the participants in joining us for the 7-day FDP. Thank you all.